The Vizu Clam Grill can only be serviced by qualified service personnel. Please download the fault finding guide using the link in the description below. Caution: the clam grill uses 415 volts 3-phase electricity. Risk of electric shock.
Remove the plug. Remove pallet. You need to remove the back panel as well. This is held in with 2 screws at the bottom. One there. This is the high limit. So we need, it's faulty, you unplug it, then you need to undo these 2 screws on each side, give you access to the back panel. Down. Now, pull that out of the way. It's better to take this off because this plate is quite heavy and it can be a bit awkward to manoeuvre. But what you have to do next is pull up at the front, pull it back, and that pulls up the conduit with it, hence the reason for doing that. And this is your high limit. In there. Now what you need to do is turn the plate over. Angle. So it's resting on top, upside down. Then you remove the 2 screws holding the plate. See, this is your probe, and the high limit is fed underneath this. What I find is easy to do.
Right.
Yeah, just basically tie it and use it up out the way. Use wire or whatever you've got to handy.
Just to keep it out of harm's way.
Basically hold it up out of the way. Take your insulation out of the way. Right, the high limit bulb end's fitted into here, so you need to unscrew these. Loosen these 2 screws. Like so, and then pull the probe out. Then all you do is just feed it back, just goes underneath there, and then you just remove the old one by taking these 2 screws out. Okay. Now you know that the capillary tube is fitted around the back of the gas ram and goes through this hole in the bottom. See my fingers where the conduit comes through. So you just pull it out and feed it back through that way. Then fitting a new one is just reverse order, so you just put it back through and fit it back up inside and just fit the new one back underneath the little saddle. Slide under in place and retighten the screws down. So it's nice and tight and held in place. Just reconnect your display terminals on the terminal. Top and the bottom. That's it. Make sure they're tight. Okay. Undo the probe and pull it out. Cut that off. Then you need to, on the bottom probe, the probe comes through the larger bottom conduit. So you just trace that back to your block, which is this one. Then you cut the two relevant wires, then take your draw wire to that, like so. Okay. And then you go back to the top. So then you pull the old probe out and you pull the wires back through to the end and disconnect that. Okay.
Okay.
So you get your new probe and do the reverse using your draw wire in your new probe. You tape it to the draw wire. Then you do the reverse and just pull it back through from the bottom, back through the conduit, through the heat bleeding, all the way till you get to the end. Right, so you fitted your new probe on, put your gland in your lock nut on, and put it back into the position. Make sure that the probe is touching the bottom plate. You can hear it tap on the bottom, so it's right to the bottom. Hold it down and tighten up your lock nut and you're done. You can just tidy it up. Put a bend in it and then fit in a cable tie. It's not imperative, but it's the way it is done. So, and there you go. And that's how to refit the probe for the bottom. Now, using the wires that we chopped off, you need to bare the ends. So you've got bare ends, and on the new probe do the same thing. These are a bit thinner, a bit more fragile, so you have to be a bit careful. What we're looking for is a bare end like this. So bare the two ends, give them a bit of a twist, and especially on the probe ones, as they need, because they're a bit thin, you need to double them over. So they're quite thick. You can get your chocolate block, the smaller one the better. This one's slightly big, but it'll do the job. Pinch your wires in. So make sure they're held in. And get the other end, marry up the red and the white. Shouldn't matter that much. It's better to keep it in continuity. And then into the block. So you just tighten up. Make sure they're all tight. Final check. Okay, and then that's it. You're done, and you can plug it back into the socket. Place one of the elements. We'll show you how to do that. You use a 10mm socket and ratchet or a span. And I'll do this one. Undo the screws. Move that. And it's disconnected. I'm afraid it's a case of undoing all these nuts.
Okay.
Okay, right, so you've removed all your bolts. If you're going to do a centre one, you probably need to take these probes off, but in this case that should be fine. Slide out the element and then put the new one back in. So it's basically just a reverse. Put the element in, making sure it's over the studs. Like that. So it's got hold in place. Right position, so they stick out so they're level, so we need to stick up. Sure earth connection. When tightening these nuts down, don't overdo it. You need a firm pressure but not too tight, otherwise they will snap the snap the stud. Okay, right, so you've tightened all that down. Now you just need to reconnect your wires. You see they're looped. Sure they're nice and tight. Make sure you don't pinch insulation underneath the clip. Only the wire. Okay, and that's it. You're in position. Your wires are reconnected in the tub, make sure they're alright. Then you're ready to put the unit back together. Replace the insulation. Probe on top. Put in position and take off your whatever you're using to hold the panel up. Make sure you're running the cable out the back. Nothing to get caught. Into the slots, into position. Line up your screw holes. Place your panel screws. Screw them down. Okay, now you're ready to turn it back over. So, same thing again. Pop it in. Very careful with your fingers. If you've got some help, it's probably advisable to get some help. Make sure the cotton is going in and slide it back into position. To the bottom, pull your conduit back into position and put your lock nut on. Right, you need to remove, if you want to change the element or a probe on the top clam, then you undo these 4 Allen bolts. So, holding the arm down. good bit of pressure on, so we'll try the spring, as you see. So you remove your 4 bolts. Slowly release the armour and push the plate back at the same time. You see the wires are held in there. Right, if you're replacing the elements, you remove these 2 bolts here, the wire on that one, and this plate comes up, and you have the same setup as on the bottom. You've got a plate with lots of bolts in which hold the elements in place, so it's exactly the same procedure. You just take all the bolts out, take the faulty element out and stick a new one in, no problem. The probe is the same thing, there's only the probe at the top, but there is one thing with the top probe, because it has to go up through and round into the arm, which is curved. It can be a bit tricky when you're pulling it through. So what you might need to do is go round back and Allen key. Just go round the back. You see the plate, this conduit, which is where the cables come through. Take these 2 screws out here. What this does is gives you a bit more play and a bit more ease to get the wires out. Because you'll find when you're drawing a new probe through that it's all very tight in here. You'll see there's the probe there, the silver one at the back. That's your probe wire. You can see it's quite tight in here, so it's better to pull this down so that you can move it around a bit, because you'll find when you're drawing it through it will catch on the inside of this gland here, so you might need to just to move it around a little bit just to get a bit of movement on it to get around, but just makes it easier. Then replace your commander socket. Make sure the plugs are in. Close your panel. Put your 2 screws in either side. Then you just reverse fitting, replacing your panels into position. So